Thanks for tuning in to the 30th episode of the MMA Podcast. It is January 30th, 2013. It's a Wednesday. We got Ben Askren, like immediately after this intro song is over. We're going to call him up. Also have a bunch of stuff to break down. As always, we had that UFC on Fox 6 card in Chicago this past Saturday. Definitely want to talk about a bunch of fights on that card, along with this UFC 156 card coming up this Saturday. It's a really, really busy season for UFC, and it's really fun to break down all these fights. Also a bunch of fight announcements, MMA news coming through. The Ultimate Fighter Episode 2 was last night. Talk a little bit about that. Let's get to this Askren interview. Son, P-Money filling in.
We did it, mama. We did it. We did it for the love of the game. We did it, mama. I did it for. Yes, sir. Mama, we did it. The game will never be the same. We did it, mama. I did it for.
You're listening to the MMA Podcast with Jake and Chris.
And yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm about to dial up Askren really quick. P-Money, thank you for filling in. You doing good today, man?
Hey, things are going brilliant, Jake. Thanks for letting me step in and take over for Chris today. Definitely things are going good. Looking forward to talking to Ben coming off that big win against Carl Amasu.
Yeah, Chris off on a sabbatical in Antarctica, battling Nazi polar bears, and we give the best to him. Let's call up Mr. Ben Askren, welterweight champion over in Bellator.
Let's do it.
Hello.
Hey, Ben?
Yeah.
Hey, Ben, it's Jake from the MMA Podcast. Thank you so much for coming on the show to chat for a minute with Patrick and I. We really appreciate you spending some time with us.
No problem.
Definitely, yeah. You know, we've had a bunch of guests on in the past: Chris Lieben, Uncle Creepy, Eddie Wineland, Ryan Jimmo, just recently. But I think this is the first time we've had a reigning champion on the show. Just kind of curious with Bellator. I was wondering, do you get a new championship belt for each defense? He just dropped off.
You've reached Ben Askren's phone. Send me a text if you can. Otherwise,
Hey, sorry about that.
Hey, yeah, no problem. Skype always gets a little funky. But I was asking, with the UFC, each title defense, the champion gets a new belt. So, you know, guys like Anderson Silva have literally 11 belts. With Bellator, is it the same sort of system, or are you literally defending one belt?
Yep, that is not the case with Bellator. I have one belt, had the same belt since I won it. They haven't started giving out new ones yet.
That's awesome. Yeah, just curious, where do you keep your title belt, and do you have any stories of anyone almost, you know, breaking it, damaging it, losing it, maybe?
Not really. It's in my closet right now, and it stays there for the most part. I'll bring it out every once in a while if I'm going to do a appearance with some kids or something. They always get pumped up and want to try it on and that kind of thing.
Before we talk about your current state in MMA, we always like to hear about how people got involved with the sport. Kind of talk us through your original, you know, when you first got into wrestling, all of that, and what really made you want to make the move over from wrestling to mixed martial arts.
Yeah, I think I've got a really common story. It's nothing very unique. I wrestled my whole life, obviously, and I just saw a lot of my friends were doing it, and they were becoming very successful. And always thought it looked like fun, and so after the Olympics in 2008, I said, hey, let's give it a shot, and that's what I did.
Yeah, you with us, Patrick, or... Damn, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah, definitely sorry about that. The Skype is terrible. But Ben, I wanted to ask, you've been with Bellator for 8 of your 11 pro fights. Tell us a little bit about how you got with Bellator MMA.
Yeah, Bellator, they were just one of the first people to call me. Obviously, like you said, I only had 3 fights before I signed with Bellator, so I wasn't really getting rung up by a bunch of major promotions or anything. They called, they put their offer on the table. It sounded good to me, and there I went. And so, yeah, I was fighting a major promotion in just my 4th fight in my MMA career. Kind of had to get up and get going really fast and had some good competition, but I was able to learn and pick up the pace, and I'm still learning, still getting better.
Definitely. Now, and as Bellator MMA is continuing to blow up, do you feel like your loyalty to that promotion has paid off now that they're, stepping up and they've been getting some good numbers on Spike so far?
Definitely. Bellator has continued to grow for a long time now. When I started, I was telling someone when I started, I was in the Chicago theater, and I think there was probably 200 people there or something. That was Bellator. I think it was Bellator 13 or Bellator 14 when I had my first fight with them. And so, yeah, it has been interesting to see him grow. I know when I fought Douglas Lima in Windsor, I think they had a sellout. It's like 6,400 people. So, and then obviously, with the last season coming out on Spike, had, I think, close to 1 million viewers the past 2 weeks. So, yeah, it's been interesting watching Bellator grow, and they've been doing a great job.
Yeah, you talked about getting started up with the Chicago theater. I actually saw the pictures you posted in Chicago for the UFC on Fox card, both training in the cage pre-fight with Duke Rufus, and then once again in the crowd once it was going on. I'm sure you're asked it all the time, but just for the sake of our listeners, how much of you wants to move over to the UFC and show everyone how you can perform on the biggest promotion in MMA right now?
I don't get too worried about that. I don't get too worked up about what people say. The only thing you do is just beat up who's ever in front of you in the octagon or in the cage. So yeah, that's what I've been doing. I've been taking it one fight at a time, and I've been very successful with that mentality, and that's what I'm going to continue to do.
Yeah, you seem to follow the same formula as a lot of successful UFC welterweights, and including champion George St. Pierre, of having really stunningly effective takedowns, ground control, and the really key ability to dole out a lot of damage from the top, sort of like your last fight just last week. If you were brought into the UFC, are there any names that pop into your head as potential opponents?
I mean, the only thing I keep saying is I want to fight George. I want to see how good I can be, and he's the keystone at 170 pounds. He's been there more than that for a while now, so obviously I'd like to get a shot at that.
Yeah, we have a listener question from our buddy Ray in the UK, kind of riding on the coattails from that Duke Rufus question. How has training with Rufus Sport affected your fighting style? And how did you get involved with them?
Well, I grew up here in Milwaukee, so it was kind of like coming home for me. It's an awesome team, got great coaches, great training partners. It's really happy to be a part of it.
Ben, in your last fight, you just defended your Bellator welterweight title this past Thursday against Carl Amasu, and he's a trash talker, and he came out, he was talking all kinds of trash. Did that affect you at all? Did that motivate you anymore, or was it just kind of the same pre-fight talk?
Yeah, I think we were both talking a little bit of trash. The only difference was everything I said came true, and everything he said was false, so he was the one that ended up with stupid.
Yeah, that was a fantastic showing. For anybody who didn't see it, you got to find that fight. I mean, you were just taking him down at will, busting him up with some solid elbows, some really good ground and pound. And after the third, the doctors deemed him unfit to continue. How good did it feel to get that stoppage, especially against a guy who was talking so much trash?
It was great. The stoppage is something I look for every single time. I just had the net effective in getting it. So being able to go out there against Carl and land those really hard strikes and cut him up and shut his eye. His eye was totally full and shut. And so to be able to do that, it felt good.
Yeah, it must have felt good. We have another listener question from our buddy Shane, and he wanted to ask if anything Amasu threw, if you were rocked at any point, if he hit you with any good shots, and also wants to know who you see yourself defending your belt against next.
Well, Carl hit me. He hit me a handful of times, but it was nothing too crazy hard. It's, we spar and practice 3 days a week, and so as an MMA fighter, that's something you got to learn to deal with. It's like it's going to be, unless you're Anderson Silva, you're pretty much never going to go through your career without getting hit. So being hit is something you got to be able to deal with. And so yeah, it definitely hit me a few times, but nothing I couldn't handle. And then my next fight is going to be the Russian. His name's Koreshkov. He already won the tournament. He finished that tournament in December. So right now I'm just waiting on a date for Bellator. I think it's probably it's looking like June.
Yeah. I was watching Inside MMA, and the date of June was thrown out there. Speaking of your appearance on Inside MMA on Friday, you said you were going to start aiming at getting those early knockouts and stoppages. You've trained all around the world, obviously training with Rufus Sport, and recently for a training camp in Hawaii to help BJ Penn train for his UFC on Fox fight. Are you going to keep looking to keep expanding out there to pick up new techniques, or are you looking to keep sharpening those skills you've picked up at the locales you currently train in?
Yeah, I'm going to stay at Duke's. Obviously, someone asked me to go somewhere else, and, it's a good opportunity. I always like going to train with other people, but for the time being, love training at Duke's. We had a lot of good guys fight last weekend. We got Chico Camus fighting this weekend at UFC 156. Alan Bellator just signed his next bout, which is against Michael Bisping, which we're excited about. That's April 27th. So we got a lot of things going on. A lot of other guys, the up-and-comers, are fighting on March 29th. So we stay busy over here.
Yeah. Talking about the fight with Carl and the kind of criticism you get from people like that, calling your dominant style boring. Obviously, if any word belongs there, it's not boring. It's effective, as you've still never lost in your whole career. What do you have to say to people who say negative things about your grinding style of fighting?
I don't really worry about what the fans are saying. I'm just really I'm in there to fight, to win, and I've been very effective getting the win, and I'm just going to keep on dominating, and not really too worried about it.
That's the champion spirit. Sort of to pan out from MMA questions. You live in Wisconsin now, and we've had lots of love from a few of our Wisconsin listeners, including the Outlaw 08, who wanted to hear you talk all things Packers, Badgers, Brewers, Bucks. Do you keep up with a bunch of different sports, or just focus on the key things in life, like mixed martial arts and frisbee golf, of course?
Well, I would say I'm the biggest fan of all those sports is the Packers. Really, anyone in Wisconsin follows the Packers. It's the national sport here in Wisconsin. I think that's what most people think. Watch the Brewers a little bit when I can, and then a little bit of Bucks, but not too many. Not too many Bucks games.
Yeah, I actually just graduated from the University of Florida, and your school, Missouri, just moved over to the SEC to play with teams in our conference. You follow college sports much, and what do you think about that move, if so?
Yeah, I don't follow too many college sports, but I definitely follow the University of Missouri. I'll always be a Tiger. I'll always watch their sports. So, they had a first rough season in the football season in the SEC. Obviously, there's a lot of really, really good teams there. So they struggled a little bit, but I think that they'll get the hang of it. And I know they're doing really well in basketball. I think they're ranked like 14th in basketball or something to that effect.
Yeah, they're pretty good in basketball.
Mm-hmm.
So, Ben, you're pretty unique in the sense that you're a professional MMA fighter and a disc golfer. Is there any similarities between the two sports, and is the difficulty level the same?
No, there's very, very few similarities between the two sports, and I just, just something that I enjoy. Picked it up when I was in college, and really like to get up there and play a lot.
Definitely. Finally, Ben, we end each interview with a question that cuts pretty deep. Chris Lieben's a cotton candy man. Mark Hominick, a vanilla guy. John Anik's poor ass is lactose intolerant. His family would go to Dairy Queen, and his ass would have to order a hot dog. What is Ben Funky Askren's favorite flavor of ice cream?
I usually go with some kind of Blizzard, or we had this place in Missouri that made concretes, which is a candy mixed with the ice cream. That's usually what I go with. So I go vanilla and then something in there to mix it up.
Very nice, very nice. Ben, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate you hanging out with us. You have any plugs or shout-outs you want to get out there?
No, not really. Just thanks for having me on the show. Really appreciate it. You guys check out my next fight and follow me on Twitter at Ben Askren.
Yeah, we really appreciate you hanging out with us. Best wishes in your next fight. We look forward to having you on again after you dish out your next ass whooping. Have a great evening, buddy.
All right, thanks a lot.
Take it
Thanks,
easy.
Ben.
Bye.
And that was the man, Ben Askren, Bellator welterweight champ. That was a fun interview. You gotta love guys who keep answers short, sweet, but to the point, and all of that. So we were kind of rushed in the beginning there because Askren wanted to get the interview done pretty quickly. I don't know if he was going out to dinner with the wife, whatever. We hope Askren's doing it big up there in Wisconsin. But we sort of usually begin most podcasts with a little intro section, so I guess we'll knock that out now. Big thanks to our listeners, always tuning in. Lenny Hart, who came on last week and now will forever be enshrined in the intro to our show. Ben Askren, obviously, who just came on. Our partners over at MMA Mental. You can call in 213-457-3380. Tweet us at the MMA Podcast. We'll read your tweets on the air. Visit us, themapodcast.com. This show, it has been Wednesdays 9 to 11. It is tonight. Starting next week, we're moving to Fridays. Time to be determined, but we are going to make that switch to Fridays next week. Follow us on Twitter and keep up to date with that. Talking about our partners, MMA Mental, y'all landed tons of interviews every week. B, you all are getting press credentials to UFC events now. Shit is getting crazy over there. How is shit going with MMA Mental, son?
Yeah, things are going good, man. Things are going real good. Our buddy Ray, he's the host. He's the mastermind behind MMA Mental. He's doing big things. He's getting all the guests. He's getting the press passes to the UFC event in London that they got coming up. Of course, our buddy Ray, based out of the UK. We got the partnership with XFC, the Extreme Fighting Championship. Their shit's on Access TV. We're interviewing their fighters. It's going lovely over there. Everybody check out MMAmental.com. They got all the latest news and all that cracking as well. So yeah, things are looking bright in 2013, Jake. And I know
real bright, son.
Yeah, that's right. And I know things are looking similarly bright with the MMA Podcast upcoming switch.
Yeah. Chris is definitely planning on coming back within a couple months. He is on sabbatical, burning down barns in eastern Iowa. I don't know why, But
Making
Chris,
snow angels.
Chris is going to be out for a little while, so we're going to have a little rotation of guest hosts tonight. We got P-Money, I think, starting next week, and for a couple weeks, we have the fan favorite. We have Ramses joining the show. That'll obviously be a lot of fun.
Ramses,
Patrick, Chris, and myself, all members of the MMA Roundtable, which is every Thursday, 7 to 9 Eastern, 4 to 6 Pacific. That's also a lot of fun. I'm trying to think of any more plugs. Twitter, Sweet Pappy Jones. That's my boy P Money. Follow us at the MMA Podcast. Yeah, we're
yes, sir.
We're having a bunch of fun doing this. Let's get straight to it, son. UFC on 6. What did you think overall of that card? You know, it was hard to match up to UFC on Fox 5 because that was one of the most spectacular cards of 2012. But it definitely held its own. Wasn't as good as 4 or 5, but still decent.
Yeah, no doubt. It was definitely it was a solid card, really, from top to bottom. I mean, these Fox shows that they've been putting on, really, even from the first one, even though only one fight was televised, the entire card underneath that was sick. This card was sick. It was a lot of brutal moments, a lot of compelling matchups, a lot of good style fights. I mean, Grant Wyman, that's such a pick'em fight. That's such a hard fight to pick. Same with Pettis Cerrone. Just those fights are just really tough to call, and you think, God, that's going to be such a closely contested bout. And you just have these blowouts and just a lot of brutal finishes, some good decisions as well. Definitely a solid 9.
Super solid. And really quick before we move on to those fights, I forgot to mention next week we got Darren Cruikshank on the show. Gonna get Joey Diaz on eventually. You have any MMA mental guests you want to throw out before we start getting down to the prelims of UFC on Fox 6?
Yeah, you know what? This coming Friday, Ray and I, we're looking to get Houston Alexander up on MMA Mental. And I know Ray, of course, he's got different guests in the works all the time. So everybody check it out. Follow MMA Mental on Twitter, and we'll keep you up to date.
Your only question should be, you lost to Kimbo Slice. Let's see what
One
he's
question.
got to say.
What happened? Just what happened?
Yeah, a bunch of fights at that Chicago card. I just spent the fall in Chicago, so I was getting pretty pretty sad seeing them do all those pans of the city. Excellent city. If you haven't been there, just visit. It's really great. I want to go back there sometime soon. But I could wax poetic bullshit all day about Chicago, but I won't. But I kind of will, I guess. Really
It's
quick,
fine.
the prelims we won't really spend too much talking about. You had David Mitchell defeating Simeon Thorson in a unanimous decision. Rafael Natal defeating Sean Spencer, 3rd round arm triangle choke, pretty nifty choke there. Sean Jordan defeating Mike Russo in an upset by TKO in the 2nd round.
Ooh.
Everyone and their mother had Russo with a unanimous decision. Sean Jordan pulls out that 2nd round TKO. And you had in the welterweights Pascal Kraus defeating Mike Stumpf via unanimous decision. Ryan Bader, he his stock had gone down quite a bit after losing 2 in a row to John Jones and obviously Tito Ortiz. Won a couple against Jason Burrows and Quentin Jackson, but then took that devastating knockout against Lyoto Machida, looking to get back in the win column, and he was able to do that. Quickest submission victory in light heavyweight history, the guillotine choke. Almost reminded me of that Bader Tito fight, just, Bader was on the other side of that. What did you think of that fight, man?
Yeah, that was a great fight, and I was definitely shocked to hear when they announced that statistic that was the fastest submission in light heavyweight history. And who would have thought it would have come from Ryan Bader? It was a good fight. It was a good showing. I think that one went down pretty much the way most of us envisioned it, except it looked like Bader was going to get that TKO. He dropped him with some sweet hands, and he decided to go for the submission finish, and he was able to get it. It was a good show, and against a dangerous opponent, Vladimir Matyushenko. He's had some setbacks, but only to some of the toughest guys. I mean, he's been on a good run on the tail end of his career. So yeah, I liked what I saw from Bader.
Yeah, and other than that freak loss to Tito Ortiz, those only two losses coming to Jones and to Machida, who a lot of people argue are the first and second best fighters in the light heavyweight division. Looking at people who are available, the people at the top, it's kind of congested now with Jones fighting Sonnen, Machida fighting Henderson. We'll see a little bit of clearance after we see Rashad Evans fight Little Nog this Saturday. Obviously, you have Alexander Gustafsson taking on Gegard Mousasi next April. Who does Ryan Bader take on next? Thinking of guys who are available, you have Davis, who was announced in a fight with Vinny Magalhaes. We'll talk about that fight in a little bit. I kind of want to see him fight Glover. Glover really hasn't been tested. He fought a Quentin Jackson who, let's face it, is far past his prime and just looking for an exit ticket. And obviously that beatdown against Fabio Maldonado. I want to see Glover fight a young, inspired, athletic guy in Ryan Bader, and the winner of that maybe be one or two fights away from a title shot.
Yeah, that's a spectacular suggestion right there. And I'll tell you what, I was less than impressed with Teixeira's performance. I mean, not to knock the guy at all. I guess maybe I was just a little high on that hype. I thought he was just going to dump Rampage's corpse in a fucking river somewhere and just massacre him that night. But Rampage came out looking good and was hitting him up with some shots. So that being said, I think that would be a good fight, Bader and Glover. If not that, I think since we have this coming weekend, we have Rashad Evans taking on Lil Nog, Rogerio Nogueira. I think the winner of that fight, even potentially the loser, who knows? Preferably the winner, though, of that fight would get the title shot. Either one of those guys is a huge name and a solid fight, so I think that could be a way to go.
Definitely, yeah. I was definitely ready to see Glover take on Rashad actually at first, thinking that Glover versus Rashad would set up nicely for a little title fight. But just like you said, Glover really didn't go out there and impress me like he did in his last fight against Maldonado. So maybe put him up against Bader next. Going back to that Bader Matyushenko fight, should Vladimir Matyushenko, I'm not old, or I'm not sure how old he is, I'm pulling up right now, he's 42 years old, the Belarusian, should he retire from mixed martial arts with a record of 26-7?
It's hard for me to say. I don't think so. I'm sorry. It's such a tough call because he is a really good mixed martial artist. He's good everywhere. He's a throwback fighter. He's been around for forever. And really his only losses are against some of the top guys in the division. John Jones, he fought him on the Versus card, and I want to say he had maybe a 4-fight win streak going into that. Alexander Gustafsson, I believe, was his fight previous to the Bader fight, which was quite the quick finish in itself.
Yep, he actually didn't have any fights in 2012. Took a little over a year off between those two fights. Yeah. He's 4-3 in the UFC, but you look at his 3 losses, and they're all against top guys: to John Jones, Alexander Gustafsson, now Ryan Bader. He's an entertaining guy. If he wants to keep fighting, let him keep fighting. All 5 of his last 5 fights have been finished in the first round. Vladimir going 2-3 in those fights, obviously losing those 3 fights I mentioned and defeating Jason Brills and Alexandre Ferreira. I say give him another 1 or 2 fights against B-level guys. If he still can't keep up, then he should retire. But losing to Ryan Bader, that's not the worst thing that can happen to your career.
Yeah, certainly not. Definitely no shame in losing to Ryan Bader. I still say he's a top dude in the 205-pound division. For Matyushenko, I'd say yeah, give him a few more fights. My only concern is his last 3 losses have all been TKOs, and they all have been fairly brutal. So, even if he does lose, if it's not a brutal knockout, I say, hey, keep going. But I don't like seeing too many of those consecutive TKOs compiling on a fighter's record and endorsing them getting sanctioned by any athletic commission for a cage fight.
Exactly, and the next fight kind of goes back to those athletic commissions. You had a featherweight bout between Clay Guida and Hatsu Hioki. Very, very close fight. Could have gone either way in a split decision. It went Clay Guida's direction. The fight going 28-29, one toward either guy, and 130-27. It turns out the judge that scored the fight 30-27 in favor of the winner, Clay Guida, who had the deciding vote. It turns out he is from Chicago, the same area as Guida, is friends with Guida on Facebook. Obviously a supporter of Clay Guida. It's been confirmed that he is Guida's friend. He's come out and said he didn't let it affect his judging, and kind of gave a reasoning for every round. But I still don't buy it. If I'm watching my favorite fighter fight and he's getting destroyed, I'll still come up with reasons why. Oh, well, he can do this, blah, blah. You can make up rhetoric for either side you're going to take, and I think it's a shame these athletic commissions don't look into these MMA judges and see, hey, is he a Facebook friend with either one of the fighters? Oh, hey, yes, he is. Let's not let him judge this fight. Come on, guys.
Yeah, it's just insane. I mean, it doesn't take that much time to do the research. They got to have someone at the athletic commission that can take out a couple hours of the day just to make sure there is no egregious conflict of interest like this going on. I mean, it's just insane to think that you could judge a fight impartially like that when you apparently have some sort of fairly close relationship with the person fighting in the cage. I mean, come on. It's just ridiculous. You can say you don't have a bias, but I mean, it's just so easy to interpret the unified rules of mixed martial arts to how you want to see the fight. If you want to give the top position wrestler the win, even though he's getting elbowed and he's doing nothing but defending submissions and not anything significant on the feet whatsoever. I mean, you can draw up your defense for giving it to the top position wrestler, but a fight is a fight, and I think more judges are coming around, but this is just unacceptable. I mean, I can't even. I don't even know what to say about it, Jake. I'm so fucking pissed.
Yeah, and when you have guys like Keith Kaiser who don't take the time to pick out judges or give these judges televisions or have competent referees in there judging fights, yet he's detailed enough to where he calls out Nick Diaz for drinking water bottles before a drug test. To have a guy like that who's looking to bury guys and not looking to do his own job, it kind of puts me in the same mind frame. Kind of makes me want to go and get a law degree just so I can move out to Las Vegas and run in an election against this guy. I don't know what else to do because you have these incompetent people running these athletic commissions, and it's just going to keep on. The UFC can't do anything because they're a promotion, and it's illegal for them to step in and mess with the athletic commission. So it's all got to be on them. Dana White can say all he wants, but the UFC's kind of powerless, even though they get a lot of the blame. And it's just something that at least for the foreseeable future, Pat, is just going to keep pissing us off.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's just a catch-22. You would think, especially the guys over in Vegas, you would think they would want to get some sort of change going on this. A lot of people are going down to the sports books and putting money on this sport, and it's just, you never want to have a sketchy decision like that where you put money on someone and they actually win their fight, but they don't get the decision. I've had that happen, where, I'll go and I say, oh, this fight's going to go this way. This is how things are going to go. And that's what happens when the guy still doesn't get the decision. It's infuriating, and it shouldn't happen. We need competent officiating. We
do. And sort of to get off of that and talk about the fight, Guida ends up winning, and I could have seen either guy taking this fight, but Guida with a win. Where does Guida go from here? For a baiter, I called out a guy on this card. I'm going to do the same thing for Clay Guida. I want to see him fight Ricardo Lamas for a title shot. What do you think is next for the Carpenter?
Oh, man, you know what? For Clay Guida, I don't know, but I was really unimpressed with his performance at 105 pounds. He's one of those guys. He definitely had some hype going down to 145 because he was a big name. Has turned it on. He's been better in the past couple of years in his career, but he did not look impressive at all. Where does he go from here? He's got to fight someone who's on a decent win streak, or at least someone who's got a big name. I'd like to see him fight maybe an Eric Koch, although I know that probably wouldn't happen for some time, especially with the fact of him coming off the loss in the way that he did.
You got Korean Zombie out there?
Yeah, you know what? That'd be a fantastic fight. I like that, Jake. I mean, the Korean Zombie, what the hell is he doing on the sidelines? I'd love to see him fight Clay Guida.
Yeah, I know he hasn't fight since May. Ran into a little injury trouble. Let me do a little quick Wikipedia action. Blah, blah, blah. No, it doesn't say anything. I don't see anything about his comeback, but, he should be back soon, having not fought since May 15th, getting that Dars choke against Dustin Poirier. Getting to Hatsu Hioki, I don't know where Hioki goes from here. Who do you think he fights next? And why has JMMA had such a hard time getting on its feet in the U.S.? All of these Japanese fighters, even sort of recently, it's been a historic thing. But guys, there definitely have been guys who have come over and made a definite positive impact. Yushin Okami being the first one that pops in my mind. But a lot of these guys, Kid Yamamoto, Hatsu Hioki now coming off 2 losses against Ricardo Lamas this past June, and Clay Guida just recently at UFC on Fox. Why is JMA having such a problem here in the U.S.?
One of the things I've heard put forward a lot to try and explain that is the traveling from Japan
west to east.
Yeah, traveling west to east. Just the time difference. Just that it's harder to acclimatize to that. I couldn't attest to that myself personally, but that's definitely one theory that's put forth.
Rob, I was listening to Rob Wolf of the Paleo Diet saying that exact same thing on the Rogan podcast. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, that's crazy. I hadn't heard that. But yeah, that's one theory. I mean, it's not like these guys aren't good, but it's just kind of I don't know. Maybe it's just simply the fact that you look at the United States. Quite simply, it's just. It's a continent versus where Japan's a country. Not only that, but the United States is a gigantic continent. Hundreds of millions of people. There's so much talent to draw from. The wrestling base that's instituted all across this entire country in public schools, that definitely has a large part to do with it, I think. Like you said, Yushin Okami, he's really the one guy that pops out as a Japanese mixed martial artist who's achieved success. And you look at some of the other bigger names, Michihiro Omagawa, who's maybe got a 500 record now. Heck, even Yoshihiro Akiyama, if I'm not mistaken, he has a losing UFC record. And, he's definitely a great fighter, but it's hard for these guys.
Sexy Yama, and to sort of get back to Hatsu Hioki, Who do you think he fights next? Thinking about it, the UFC likes putting guys who have just won against guys who have just won, and the same thing with guys who are coming off of losses. Two Brazilians who are pretty decent featherweights that are coming off losses that pop into my head are Diego the Gun Nunes and Charles Oliveira. You have any fights in mind for the Iron Broom Hatsuhioki?
Yeah, I think the Nunes fight is definitely a good choice. God, Nunes was just decimated in his last fight against Nick Lentz. Certainly not any kind of similar fashion to what Hioki's loss was. I think he won the fight. But I think that's a good one. It's a good test for Hioki. It's good for Nunes. I don't think Nunes would get cut if he lost. That's definitely a danger for Hioki. But heck, I would think he's got a good chance in that fight. He's much taller, and I think after both of their ground experiences, they probably want it to be a stand-up battle.
Definitely. We'll get back to the featherweights in just a second. But we had a lightweight bout between TJ Grant and Matt Wyman that was finished in the first round. Both of these guys, really two of the most underrated fighters in the lightweight division. One of them had to win, and that was TJ Grant by a first round TKO 9 seconds before the bell. Grant now really has cracked himself into that top 10 of the lightweight division, to, sit amongst the guys like Pettis, Maynard, Nate Diaz, Jim Miller, Bendo, obviously, Gilbert Melendez coming in. Who's next for TJ Grant? I was thinking a fight with Jim Miller might be ideal, but it's looking like Pat Healy, who just recently, I think was going to be matched up against Gilbert Melendez, but that fight never came to be. I think Miller is locked up in a fight with Pat Healy, so Grant's kind of floating out there. I was saying Miller versus Rafael Dos Anjos, and now that Miller's kind of taken off the table, I'll say Rafael Dos Anjos, who, just beat Mark Bocek this past November. That would be a nice test for the Canadian TJ Grant.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good one for Grant. Definitely a whole host of options. Grant's just looking insane now at 155 pounds. For who he should fight next, God, I'd like to see him against maybe Khabib Nurmagomedov. He's been looking good lately. Undefeated fighter. He's got a crazy record.
Yep.
Potentially, Abel Trujillo. He looked really good. I know that may be kind of a mismatch just as far as experience goes and win streaks and all that. But yeah, lots of great options for him. I definitely think Nurmagomedov would be a good choice.
Yeah, and Wyman, let's briefly, I don't want to see him drop off too far. What about a fight against Joe Lauzon, who recently lost to Jim Miller? That'd be a pretty good one.
Yeah, I think a fight with him and Lauzon would be solid for sure. Wyman, he's constantly underrated. I don't know, maybe as much as he used to be, but he is a very solid lightweight. Him and Joe Lauzon would be a good scrap. If not, heck, maybe him versus Crookshank. I know Crookshank's on the way up. You could argue that they're in similar ranking territory as of the moment.
Yeah, boy, Darren, hope to have him on next week. Let's fast forward to the main card. Get back to that featherweight title picture. You had Ricardo Lamas defeating Eric Koch in the second round via TKO. Some nice elbows and punches thrown in there. First for I guess the loser, Eric Koch. The winner of this fight was going to be in title contention. Eric Koch had been matched up in two different cards, I believe UFC 149 and 153. Either guy backed out for injuries. This doesn't throw Eric Koch that far down the ladder for featherweight title contendership, as Lamas really is one of these top guys. But thinking what is next for him, I don't know. You have any thoughts as to who Koch should take on next?
You know what? God, it's so hard for me to keep track with the UFC putting on as many events as they do and having almost 400 fights on their roster now. I mean, Coke, he still seems he's one of the top guys of the division. He's definitely a class 145-pounder, and it was a very close fight up until he just gave up a bad position there, and he paid for it with some insane elbows. As far as who he fights next, I posited that him and Hioki could potentially face off.
I was actually about to say the exact same thing. I didn't think of it when talking about Hioki, but yeah, I would really like that fight.
Yeah, I think that'd be good. I think that'd definitely be a dynamic fight.
And, the other side, the winner, Ricardo Lamas, coming off 3 straight wins against the cream of the crop in featherweight against Cub Swanson, Hatsu Hioki, and Eric Koch. Obviously, he's close to that title shot. I would argue a fight away. You have Guida sitting up there as well. You have Cub Swanson and Dustin Poirier in just a couple of weeks. The winner of that fight will be in the running too. Really, I wish we had Pat Curran coming over from Bellator, because I think Pat Curran could give any of these guys a run for his money. And we have the featherweight title fight just in a few days, so a lot of things being sorted out at 145 pounds there. We'll move back up to 155 pounds, though, where Anthony Showtime Pettis, just keeps looking better and better. Man, I'll admit I had Donald Cerrone in this fight. Cerrone's got an incredibly vast toolbox. He has Chris stand-up, good wrestling, good jiu-jitsu. But Pettis, sort of pulled a Nate Diaz out of his back pocket and really made Cerrone look like a cut rate fighter. Looked amazing. Got a knee off of the cage. Sort of a variation of that Showtime kick. And about halfway through the first round, landed a liver kick that really ended the fight. Sent Donald Cerrone onto his ass and gave Pettis the TKO. Man, what is next for Donald Cerrone? I guess we'll talk about first. One of these guys who seems to, perennially be in the top 10 of that lightweight division, and whenever he gets too close, he gets knocked back down.
Yeah, that's definitely that's been the story of the Cowboy in the WEC and the UFC as of late. As far as what's next for him, I'd like to see him maybe take on a Tim Means. Of course, Means, he's I'm trying to think if he's at 1-0 or 2-0 in the UFC right now. But he's certainly looking good. They're not too close in rankings, but they're very similar. Both very tall and lanky 155ers. I think that'd be an entertaining matchup, if nothing else.
Stylistically, I like that, but I think, just the way I look at it, that Cerrone's proven that he is a top 10, top 15 guy with the work he's put forward. I would actually say you were talking about, I believe, Grant fighting Khabib next. Maybe put Cerrone up against Khabib. We haven't really seen him fight a top guy at lightweight. His last fight was Thiago Tavares. Just a week and a half ago. Cerrone would certainly be a big step up from Thiago Tavares and would be a good test to see if Khabib's really top 10 material.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. That would definitely be a sick fight.
And, you have Anthony Pettis, who at the press conference, Dana White said that he's got his title shot, asked if he's going to wait on it or fight. I'll let you sort of weigh in on that first. I think I have sort of an unpopular opinion on this, but should Anthony Pettis sit out for his next title shot or keep on fighting?
Jake, if you could refresh my memory, when is Henderson supposed to fight Melendez? Isn't that like a
Henderson versus Melendez is going to be on 4/20, son.
Oh, damn, son. Get ready for that. Woo.
Light him up, son. Light him up.
Oh, damn. Smoke that. Yeah, that's going to be sick, but that's a long time. So, okay, that's like 3 months from now.
It's roughly 3 months.
And then you got to figure at least 3 months, probably 4, maybe 5 months after that would be when the title fight is.
I think most of us would agree that Benson will probably win, but Gilbert will get in his punches for sure.
Yeah, I think that's the general consensus. You know what? I don't even know if Gil will get in that many punches. I mean,
strong words.
I mean, for real, son. Cesar Gracie, I love those cats, but damn. I mean, after the way the fight with Nate went down, I thought Nate was going to hand it to him. It went the complete opposite way. Damn.
After watching Nate versus Benson, I'm like, all right, I guess Benson is now up there in the elite pound for pound with Anderson, GSP, and Aldo now for me, because that shit was insane. Yeah,
no doubt. And I mean, that's a really great point, Jake. You can certainly make that case because Nick Diaz, he was 2-2 at 170 in the UFC. And I'll tell you what, he fucking beat the stun gun Maya, Dong Hyun Kim.
Yum Yum Kim, cocksucker.
Yum Kim, he beat that fucking cocksucker. He fucking landed one good punch from the standing guard. Everybody wants to blow up that gif. They want to act like it was something. You go back and watch that fucking fight. Nate Diaz won that fight. Dong Hyun Kim couldn't do shit.
I agree.
I mean, oh man. Anyways. So, and really, the only loss I count for him at 170 is against Rory McDonald. That was a legit beating. So yeah, that definitely strengthens Henderson's case for being top pound for pound, considering what a good competitor Diaz is at other weight classes. Man, yeah, I can't wait for him versus Pettis though, and I think. Although staying active bit Pettis in the ass the first time, I really think that he should. I really think he should stay active. I always believe that it doesn't matter if you're a contender, if you're the champion, you need to stay active because it's about being the best. And if you lose on the way to a championship title shot, then it's just meant to be.
I really want to side with you, and 99.9% of the time I would, but there's just so many factors going into it. You mentioned this is the second time he's deserved a title shot. The first time, obviously, when he came over from the WEC, and the UFC title was tied up between Frankie Edgar and Gray Maynard, so he took a fight, lost to Clay Guida, and didn't get that title shot. I believe it was Guida, right? Yeah, it was Guida at the Tough 13 finale.
Yeah.
But so there is that. If it was just that, I still would stay active. But then you've got to keep in mind, Pettis is relishing this fight against Benson Henderson. Benson is 11-1 since coming into the WEC and that turning into the UFC. So in Zuffa Promotions, he's 11-1. His only loss was that unanimous decision loss of that final Strikeforce card, the end of 2010. Pettis ending it in the 5th round with that incredible Showtime kick. So,
that final WEC card.
Yep, yeah, son, yeah, fucking player, yeah. So you have the fact he already lost his title shot, the fact he beat Benson, and on top of that, the fact that Pettis just took a year off and looked as crisp as I've ever seen him. Really, if still, that liver kick, if anything, was a saving grace for Donald Cerrone, because Cerrone was getting bullied the first half of that first round. Not just. I honestly don't know if it was Cerrone just sort of being frozen in there like he was against Nate Diaz, or if it was Pettis just putting on a real masterpiece of a fight. But I really want to see Pettis versus Bendo again, and I would almost always say keep fighting, but in this case I'll say sorry, I burped there. I'll say wait it out, player.
Yeah, and I could definitely, there's a million good points in your argument. My only thing is that everyone has that fighter that has their number. You can be the best dude in the world, but there's, that one guy where he's got your number. I mean, and for Ben Henderson, that could be Showtime Pettis. But just because Pettis is the one guy who has his number, does that mean he's championship material? That Clay Guida loss is the only thing that gives me pause. It makes me say, well, how long could he stay in the championship if he does fight and if he does beat Benson Henderson? But I mean, goddamn, like you were saying, he looked insane against Cerrone. I mean, he was landed. It was a flying off the cage, knee to the face. It was like a fucking Street Fighter 2 Sagat tiger knee flying off the cage directly into the face. It was a thing of beauty. The liver kick was it was brutal. Pettis he put it on Cerrone like nobody's business. Man, yeah, I can't wait to see him. Whoever he fights next, if it's for the title, if it's just staying active, I'd really love to see him win another fight before the Benson Henderson fight, because I'm rooting for that fight, Henderson Pettis too, because I did see the final fight ever in the WEC, and it was just one of the best displays of mixed martial arts I'd ever seen.
Yeah, and obviously as a fan, I want to see him fight again too. How great would a Eddie Alvarez versus Anthony Pettis fight be? That would be a barn burner.
Oh yeah, that'd be sick. It's funny. I was actually kind of hoping for an Eddie Alvarez Gilbert Melendez fight.
Yeah, the two guys coming in, the champions of Strikeforce and ex-champion of Bellator.
Exactly. I thought that would be pretty sweet. But yeah, heck yeah, Alvarez versus Pettis. That'd be crazy.
Yeah, we're about an hour in. We'll breeze on to the main and co-main. Start with the co-main. Glover Teixeira defeating Rampage Jackson via unanimous decision. My boy Ramsey's calling all sorts of works. I thought it was really funny. In the first round, in the first round where both guys were swinging, it was looking like it might. And Ramsey gets on Twitter and goes, "See, it's obviously a work. It's obviously a work." Then it goes to a decision. He's like, "See, guys, it's a work." Like, what? You can't. Come on, son. So I don't know if you'll ever be able to convince Ramsey that half of all the fights in the UFC aren't works. But before we tackle the Rampage topic, the Rampage and the UFC topic for maybe the last time until he leaves and is over in Bellator, what is next for Mr. Glover Teixeira? I mentioned I would want to see him fight Rashad, but that, was not an inspiring performance. Maybe take on Bader, who got that quick submission earlier in the card.
Yeah, I really like that. I know we touched on that a little bit earlier, breaking down the Bader-Matyushenko fight, but yeah, yeah, because I really do think that's just it's a logical place to go with where they're both at.
Yeah, going back to Rampage, do you think we ever see Rampage in the UFC again? I don't think we do, unfortunately. Page, sort of like a kid who's been playing video games at the highest level and losing against the top guys over and over. Page is just like, you know what? I'm gonna dial it back down to easy, knock out a bunch of fools in Bellator to end my career, still be on TV all over the U.S. and be happy. And I think that's what Rampage does. There are a couple light heavyweights over there. King Mo comes to mind. You got the champion Christian Mapumbu. But yeah, I don't think we see Rampage in the UFC again. Do you?
I would kind of like to. God, I was a huge fan of Rampage's. Of course, really after the Forrest Griffin loss, it was kind of all downhill from there for Rampage. At least in terms of his fan popularity, but as crazy it may sound, I think in the John Jones fight, and ever since going forward, except for his performance against Ryan Bader, where he was injured, he really developed some good head movement and stuff that I just had never seen it look that crisp from Rampage. I mean, he's always had good boxing, but I really thought it just been looking better lately. Maybe it's just me tripping, but even in the Teixeira fight, I think he looked better with the hands. Teixeira, just over a 15-minute fight, he got his in, and his just happened to be more powerful. You mix that in with the work on the takedowns. I mean, I don't know. But as far as moving to Bellator, I think, I just think that'd be funny. Him and King Mo, they had some beef going on a while back, and I could have sworn I heard that had smoothed out.
I think it had.
Yeah, which is really unfortunate because that's a fight I want to see. But I mean, heck, I don't even know if Rampage could hang with King Mo, which is just crazy to say. Yeah, I don't know. So whether or not we see him in the UFC again, probably not.
Damn. Page isn't getting any younger, so if he were to fight King Mo, it would probably need to be sooner rather than, if it was a year or two down the line. That would obviously fare better for King Mo. We'll get to the main event of UFC on Fox, the flyweight title. Demetrius Johnson retaining his championship against John Dodson via unanimous decision, 49-46, 48-47, 48-47. The one thing that kind of sticks out to me, I think Mighty Mouse was the better fighter and should have won the fight, but at the same time, I think he should have been deducted a point for a strong knee to the head of John Dodson when his head was on the ground. Johnson had been in trouble just the round before for kneeing John Dodson in the nuts. Dodson had to take a second. Johnson got a warning then. And then just a round later, Dodson, he's crouched over, hand on the ground. I think one of his knees was down as well, or maybe it wasn't. I forget. But yeah, Mighty Mouse with a strong knee to the dome of Dodson. I think he should have been deducted a point. That actually would have made the fight a majority draw. Do you think Mighty Mouse should have been deducted a point?
I do think he should have been deducted a point. I mean, what do you have to do? It's one of those things. I mean, even if it's just repeated kicks in the balls, I mean, if you can see fights where you see like 3 illegal blows and it's like, well, he's not repeating fouls because first he kicked him in the nuts, then he elbowed him in the back of the head, then he bit his ass. Like, it's like, as long as it's a different foul, like, you don't get a point deducted. And it's just ridiculous. You need to be...
Yeah, so, sort of talking about the illegal point, it sort of goes into one of these things that the state commissions really need to tackle.
Here. I mean, getting the 2 to the 3 is not an issue.
Because, had some in the background there. Because, yeah, these guys, like you said, you can't, do one of each kind of foul and only get warnings. You've really got an unfair advantage doing that. But sort of moving on, we got a bunch more to tackle in the second hour. What's next for either guy? I'd like to see Jean Moraga, who just beat Chris Carriasso this past December for John Dodson. I think we'll see another title shot out of John Dodson. Love his personality. He's always smiling. Even in the post-fight the post-fight presser kept his sunny attitude, asked whether that knee to the dome rocked him, and he said, well, I'm not a bitch, so no. which I thought was a pretty funny answer. Yeah, John Moraga next for Dodson. I think next for Mighty Mouse we'll see the winner of Ian McCall versus Joseph Benavidez, which will be this weekend.
Yeah, I definitely think that's probably how it's going to happen. As for what happens to John Dodson, I think Moraga is a good choice for him. If not, gosh, there's definitely some guys coming up. Maybe Louis Gaudino, if I'm not mistaken. Gaudino's 2-0 in flyweight. I may have to go check that out. No. I think he's just coming off the win over John Lineker. But yeah, I think that'd be a good fight.
Yeah, that It's still definitely the most shallow division in the UFC, but it's starting to grow. You know, they really got to bring over this Joshua Sampo guy, who's coming off back-to-back wins against the Cuban Alexis Villa and Antonio Benuelos. He's been making a big splash on the featherweight scene outside of the UFC. I guess that sort of finishes up our UFC on Fox recap. We'll get straight to the news. If you want to call in, that phone number one more time is 213-457-3380. That's 213-457-3380. If you want to Skype in, the Twitter name is the MMA Podcast. Tweet us at the MMA Podcast. You ready to get to the news?
Yeah, cuz. Let's see what's good in the headlines.
That's good. Let's see the news. And in the news, The Ultimate Fighter Episode 2 was just yesterday. I want to touch on that first. We got a lot of Team Sonnen fans. Actually, Ramses' podcast, they had Coach Jamie Huey on last night, who's one of the Team Darkside hosts. It's going good for Team Sonnen, getting the victory, getting to pick the next fight, putting Uriah Hall out there. We'll talk about that Hall versus Sella fight in a minute. But Team Jones not looking as good. Already a bit of dissension within Team Jones. What is the deal over there?
You know what? I do not know. I couldn't tell you. Truthfully, I've not got to see this week's Ultimate Fighter. I had a terrible DVR malfunction and have not been able to catch a replay of it since.
Oh, well, sort of in a nutshell, I'll break it down for you and maybe any of our listeners who weren't able to tune in. It was kind of perplexing because they picked this matchup, Gilbert Smith versus Luke Barnett. Barnett, the UK fighter, who had a tremendous height and reach advantage on Smith. And pretty much his entire team was just hating on Smith, saying he wasn't going to win the fight. Smith was out in the backyard crying. We had another crier. He was saying, that he felt like no one really supported him. It was kind of awkward, and Team Jones is already at each other's throats. You had Josh Salmon and Bubba McDaniel sort of leading the way on railing against the fight, which, the fight's made. There's nothing you can do but help your teammate prepare. Don't sit around and bitch that because he's going to lose the fight, you're going to lose control of the picks and you won't get your dream fight. Help your buddy prepare. It was not looking good out of that Jackson guy, Bubba McDaniel. Hey, Jackson guy showing a lack of teamwork. We've seen similar things come out of Jackson's before. It was pretty wild. Uriah Hall versus Adam Sella. I guess if you didn't watch are you familiar with either guy? Uriah Hall, pretty much that's the only guy you need to be familiar with. He looked incredibly impressive during that first episode, and I see him getting in there, getting another win for Team Darkside, and making it to the quarterfinals. It's either going to be him or Thor Trong as far as whichever this famed guy is who's sending people to the hospital in every fight.
Yeah, I kind of heard that was the early word that those two guys were the favorites. I was kind of impressed with Trong. He did get the knockout, if I'm not mistaken, in the first episode. And the clips you saw, Uriah Hall looked pretty damn good. So, I can definitely understand why they're favored early.
Yeah, we'll move on. We'll stick with sort of Chael Sonnen news. The fighter that's always going to be tied to Sonnen, no matter how this Sonnen Jones thing, how heated it gets, Anderson Silva. The two fighters will always be tied together, and Anderson Silva recently being hinted at by Dana White. His next opponent could be Chris Weidman in the near future. A lot of people are saying that they think Anderson does not want that matchup because he's scared of that match stylistically that he matches up against Weidman. Do you agree with these people saying that Anderson is scared stylistically of fighting Chris Weidman, and should he be?
Well, that's a really tough statement to get behind. I mean, the thing is Anderson Silva, he's probably the best pound for pound fighter in MMA. Definitely very close to the greatest of all time status. He's a GOAT candidate easily, if not running away with it. But just, based on what we've seen in his Chael Sonnen fight, that was the guy who gave him trouble. And Weidman really, I would say it right now. I'd say Weidman does have more tools than Chael Sonnen. I would probably pick him to beat Chael Sonnen. And I do think he has what it takes to beat Anderson Silva. The only thing is, do I believe that he's scared to fight him? I don't, but at the same time, his actions really would seem to tell another story. Why would he not have fought him anyways? Why does he go fight Stephan Bonner on short notice to save one card when he had planned on sitting out the entire year just because, him and Ed Soares and everybody, they don't believe that Weidman's a legit contender. I don't know what else you have to do besides out-grapple Damian Maia, which Anderson Silva wanted no part of Damian Maia on the ground. Let's not forget that. Chris Weidman took him down for 3 rounds and controlled him and just wrestle-fucked him. And it may not be what people want to watch, but you know what? When it's 2 really high-level grapplers like that, I love it. And, he did what Anderson Silva didn't do. And some would say maybe he couldn't do. So I don't think he's afraid of him, but I can definitely see where these people who are saying all that get that feeling.
Well, I do think Weidman, is one of the top middleweight pound for pound guys. The fact that he thinks he's earned the right to sit for a title fight, it's just not, he did have a lot of fight, or a lot of hype the way he devastatingly ended his fight against Mark Munoz. But you look at his, fights, his last 3 fights, he beat Tom Lawler, but no one is arguing that Lawler is in the top 15, 20 of the middleweights. He beat Damian Maia in what was a semi-uninspired match, and then he beat Mark Munoz, who a lot of people at this point wonder if Munoz even deserved to be in the top 10 to begin with. While I do see him stylistically maybe offering Anderson a problem, I feel like that's the story I hear every time, whether it's, Damian Maia's jiu-jitsu is stylistically gonna mess Anderson up, or whether it was Dan Henderson's wrestling and boxing, or whether it was Vitor's boxing, or whether it was Sonnen who was gonna beat him in the second fight. Every fight, it seems like the story is, he has the right, way of fighting to beat Anderson. It was the same exact thing in the Yushin Okami fight. I just don't see it. I think Anderson would plow through Chris Weidman in the second round. And I think Weidman, as much as I see him wanting to stay and wait for the title fight, I think Hendricks deserves the welterweight title. He's done more at welterweight than Weidman's done at middleweight. Dan Henderson and Lyoto Machida have done more at light heavyweight than Weidman's done at middleweight, and they're both waiting on Chael Sonnen, who doesn't really deserve a title shot in the first place. So Weidman's acting like this is the biggest what is the word I'm looking for? The biggest crime in history, that he isn't being given a title shot, when in reality, it's going on all over the place. You got to keep fighting, man. You fought. He did fight twice in 2012. He fought in January and July, but he's fought one time in the last calendar year. And it wasn't like he took a lot of damage in that Mark Munoz fight, and he's just not. It didn't seem like he. That's all right. I totally forgot that he was going to fight Tim Boetsch and had to pull out to injury. I really want to see him just fight at least one more time before getting a title shot. He will deserve. I just want to see him stay active.
Yeah, I want to see him stay active too. It's certainly, like I said, I want everybody to keep fighting. It doesn't matter if you're the champion, if you're the contender, whoever you are. I just want to see that activity. However, I do have to disagree with you. I mean, Johnny Hendricks, most people will say he lost to Josh Koscheck. I mean, that decision probably should have gone Koscheck's way.
A W is a W, my friend.
A W is a W, and Johnny Hendricks has them together. And, I do think he beat Mike Pierce. That was another close split decision. I do think that went his way. That's another one I'd probably have to watch a couple more times just to be sure. But, I mean, heck, with how he knocked out John Fitch and Martin Kampman, you can't really argue that. But, I mean, Chris Weidman, if I'm not mistaken, he's 9-0, came into the UFC with a 4-0 record, beat Alessio Sakara on short notice, just bloodied him up, choked out Jesse Bongfeld. The Damian Maia fight, that was on like 10 days notice.
I think it was like 8 or something stupid.
Yeah, it was something ridiculous like that. He had to cut who knows, 20 to 40 pounds in some crazy neighborhood like that. And, I loved his performance. The fact that he could cut that much weight and still have enough to show up and beat one of the highest level no-gi grapplers that is competing in mixed martial arts today, or even in pure grappling. And to do what he did on such short notice, I found it amazing. And I think that really gets sold short. And of course, look at what he did to Munoz with the full camp. That was just an absolute decimation. So I do think he's done enough to truly be deserving of it. But, you mix in his injuries, you mix in Anderson Silva, who wants to take 6 months off at a time just for no reason, unless there's a fight at light heavyweight against, someone who's barely in the top 10. Then he'll go and take that fight.
I want to play more paintball, I want to play the paintball.
Yeah, it's insane. He should just take another fight. And that's what I want to see, because, he could be the guy to have Anderson Silva's number, but I want to see a champion that'll truly hold down the belt for a long time. And I think if you want to do that, you gotta stay active, and you gotta take on all comers.
Yeah, and I really hate to sound negative on Weidman. I love him as a fighter. He's exciting. Obviously, my heart goes out to him. I think his family was affected with Hurricane Sandy. I believe he's from the New Jersey area.
Yeah,
so we definitely send our thoughts over to him. But, I would just like to see him fight one more time between now and then, maybe against a guy like a Belfort or a Rockhold. I know he's friendly with Rockhold, but that would be an amazing fight. Really quickly before we move on, just really quick, numbers between 1 and 100. How much a percent chance do you give to Chris Weidman in that fight? The number I'm going with, 0. There's 0% chance he beats Anderson Silva.
Oh, damn, cuz that is harsh. You know what? I want to give him a good thing, or I want to give him a good percentage. The only thing is, even if I think Chris Weidman can beat Anderson Silva, and I think he can beat him, would I pick against Anderson Silva? Hell no. I'm not picking against Anderson Silva until I see his ass get knocked out or just get beat up for 5 rounds. Until I actually see him lose, I'm not going to pick him to lose. But I will give Weidman a good chance. I'll give him to fight. I say I'll give him a 50% chance.
50.
I'm giving it a coin flip, man. I'm giving it a coin flip. Yep.
Wow.
But,
strong words. Realistically, the highest I was going to go was 10. 0. I was just doing for dramatic effect. But 50%. Wow. You got a lot of belief in the New Jersey kid.
Well, like I said, I would be calling the Anderson Silva side of that coin. But I do like his chances. I like what we've seen from him. Just the way he's handled everybody in the UFC. And not to hype this kid up too much, but damn, and I shouldn't call him a kid because I think he's the same age as me, and I hate when people do that. But he has handled people in a fashion similar to that which Anderson Silva and John Jones has. I hate making that analogy, but it's true. He's just, in all of his fights, he's just made it look so effortless. And the Tom Lawler fight, that wasn't even a fight. He came out and choked Tom Lawler unconscious like it was the thing to do. Like it was fucking going out of style. And it was maybe the easiest victory I'd ever had. I mean, Lawler was sleeping on the mat. He makes it look good when he does it, and he comes in with the full camp. Yeah, that's Weidman. I got to give him some sort of shot against Silva.
Damn, strong stuff. We'll move on to a story about Dana White looking for 115-pound fighters in Mexico. Kind of an odd story. When I first heard Dana White scouting 115-pound fighters in Mexico, I got this image popped in my head of Dana White and Lorenzo Fertitta walking through Mexico with big sombreros and giant bottles of tequila, just going from via to via looking for fighters that weighed 115 pounds to recruit into the UFC. But no, they're apparently thinking about adding a strawweight division. What do you think about expanding to 115 pounds?
Man, I love fights. It doesn't matter if it's women's MMA, if it's men's MMA, if it's short people mixed martial arts. I mean, it's all good. I'm not one of those guys. I was huge. I was one of the only people hyping up those flyweights before they came to the UFC. Some people still don't even like the flyweights. I don't know what's up with that, but I would not mind seeing a 115-pound division. I mean, granted that's crazy small. That's crazy small for a grown-ass man. Not that 125 isn't, but it's just a matter of getting the division built up. I mean, as of right now, your main guys coming for 115, they are going to be in Mexico, in Brazil, in your Asian continent, in the Philippines. They're going to have to scour for the 115-pound talent. They're going to have to look real hard for that. If they can get a division built up, hey, why not? Go for it. I will support it. I want to see a UFC event every weekend. More weight classes will help that. I'm fine with that, so long as they can build and sustain the talent, and not do what they're doing with the women's division, where they're bringing in some sort of bogus title fight, but they're not even adding to their roster, and they're not even going to schedule more fights until the fight goes down. Like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah, I also have been pretty critical about Dana White not wanting to pull the trigger on the women. I accidentally just made a sexual pun. But talking about this strawweight division, I'm all for it too. I love watching the flyweights fight. I mean, well, what I mean by I'm all for it is I'm all for them watching that. But as far as the UFC bringing them in, I'm not all for. Every time you expand out and make new belts, it does take a little bit away from each belt. It's different when you have a promotion that gives out 5 belts to one that gives out 20 belts. And it used to be, here are the 5 UFC champions. Now, I believe if we bring a 115-pound champion, there will be 9 or 10. You have the original 5, and then you have the 3, and then Ronda and the 1. Yeah, that would be the 10th UFC champion, not including all the interim champions you've got. It's starting to get a little bit built up, and you know what? Even hardcore fans like ourselves, I don't think you or I could name more than 1 or 2 strawweights. In fact, I couldn't even name 1 strawweight, to be completely frank with you. As far as
I couldn't name a season, honestly. Like I'm straining, but I mean strawweight. That's a women's division essentially.
Yeah, and you're gonna give the best 115-pound guy the same exact award you give the 205-pound champion, the 265-pound champion, which, no offense, you have a lot more guys at those divisions going for the belts. I'm all down for the flyweight strap, but let's keep it there. Let's keep it at 8. You have the same problem with boxing, where literally you have like 20 weight classes and 5 different promotions who give out belts. So you've got something like 100 belts floating around out there, and no one can keep up. And if you're a if you have one belt, who the fuck cares? Yeah, that's just my thoughts on expanding it out. But, I'm all for the straw weights, but, come on, guys, just pack on 10 additional pounds and fight at flyweight, because, Dodson and Johnson, I believe, were both 5'3", and we're both not, beefed up like Alistair Overeem at 5'3" either. They were both pretty slender 5'3" guys, and I think that's a understandable minimum to get a UFC belt.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. The flyweights, you'll see the flyweights topping out. I think McCall's like maybe 5'5", potentially 5'6", and that's just to make 125 pounds. That's about your height limit. And the 115-pound guys, my gosh, some of these 115-pound boxers are just scary small. It's crazy. And, I'm not, like I said, if they can put a full division together, I'm for it. If there's a bench deep enough to sustain a strawweight division in the UFC for men's mixed martial arts, I say go for it.
Exactly.
I think if, even if they do have 10, I'll call it 9, because honestly, this UFC Women's Championship, this is bullshit. This isn't. If they're not even building a division yet, this is a showcase fight. This isn't a championship fight. This isn't even a real belt yet. How can you have a title fight for a division that doesn't exist? I wish it did, but it doesn't, and that's just what's up. So, if they added this strawweight, that'd be 9 different weight classes. Which, I think would be enough to keep up with, because in the end, it still is the UFC. As much as Bellator is blowing up, the UFC is still number one. They are the cream of the crop. And, those are really the champions that people keep up with anyways. I don't know that 9 would be too much.
Yeah, it makes about as much sense as the UFC signing you and me and having us fight for the Cruiserweight Championship of the world, which I actually still think Dana White should do. If you're listening, Dana, sign us up. But no, sort of the 2 points you're making, you've got to have enough people to stack up a legitimate division. And to be honest, you haven't even done that at flyweight yet. So let's worry about flyweight. Let's worry about bringing over some guys, especially from Bellator and 1FC, that I really want to see. Guys like Bibiano Fernandez, Shinya Aoki, Ben Askren, who we just had on an hour ago. He is one of the top guys who the UFC needs to bring over. Pat Curran. A lot of guys floating around out there that could really be huge assets to the UFC. And talking about Bellator, it's kind of funny. Rampage, it was the popular belief that he would be moving over to Bellator, but it turns out the UFC has a match offer for Rampage's next move, which is very interesting if he decides to go over to Bellator, because that same thing's panning out now with Bellator's match offer they have with Eddie Alvarez. The UFC offered them a contract including a cut of pay-per-view, and I guess Bellator is trying to match that, even though they don't do pay-per-view. So I think the UFC might be able to leverage their right to match contracts with Rampage the same way that Bellator's been doing that with Eddie Alvarez. What do you think about that? And what do you think pans out? Things are starting to get pretty ugly between Bellator and the UFC. Are we sort of seeing the beginning of a rivalry and a nemesis relationship between the two bald presidents, Dana White and Bjorn Rebney, son of Winnebago Man?
You know what? I think it very well could be. And Spike and Bellator MMA, they've got that Viacom money. Viacom, they're global. They got deep pockets, similar to Zuffa. The UFC in the industry it is in and of itself is quite a profitable entity, but they've got that station casino money, which is just, that's unlimited funds essentially. So it does look like they're getting a little heated. And I think you touched on it earlier that this could potentially play out in a situation where it's like, okay, you want Rampage, we want Eddie Alvarez. Let's just, drop the lawyer and shit and just do, a little fair trade. It may take a while for it to come to that, if it even does. But you know what? Hey, I like it. I like seeing Bellator getting some leverage to put some guys in their promotion that have some cred. And I like seeing stuff like One Fighting Championship being able to get Bibiano Fernandez and keep him going from the UFC. Just for the sake that, not that I wouldn't like to see these guys in the UFC proving themselves against the very best, but at the same time, I do like these big names in international markets. I do like other promotions getting bigger and expanding their reach and hopefully opening up new demographics and new regions of the world to help further grow and develop the sport.
I couldn't have said that better myself, you beautiful bitch. Let's move on to one more news topic before we do our beatdown of the month, break down some announced fights in that UFC 156 card. Really quickly, Matt Hughes says he regrets not fighting Anderson Silva. That would have been an amazing fight back when Silva was, first letting people get used to his fight style with the UFC back, I guess, around 07, 08, 09. So yeah, Hughes saying he regrets not fighting Anderson. Do you think a prime Matt Hughes would have had a chance against Andy?
Ooh, you know what? I'd have to say yes. I mean, prime Matt Hughes, god damn it, I love prime Matt Hughes. Frank Trigg and Matt Hughes 2, that will forever, just that fight will never leave my mind. That was just one of the best fights I'd ever seen. God damn it. Yeah, I mean, I'd have to say so, just because, Anderson, when he first came over, he wasn't too far removed from some of those pride losses. And a prime Matt Hughes in his day certainly could have given him a run for his money. Of course, Matt Hughes being retired now, I mean, that fight, we talk about that fight being made now, and I mean, just about anybody would say, why the fuck would you even want that matchup? But, back in 06, 07, I think that could have been something good. And heck, depending on when it was in Anderson Silva's career, I might have taken Matt Hughes.
I was just about to say when Chael Sonnen versus Anderson Silva went down, Sonnen really sort of exposed that hole in Anderson's game of being able to be takedown and dominated. I'm going to assume that Anderson was a lot better than the Anderson a few years before. Hughes could have done that same exact thing and maybe not got submitted at the very end of the fight. I still would pick Silva, but sort of like you said with the Weidman thing, I would give it a coin flip if we're talking prime Matt Hughes.
Yeah, definitely.
Everyone loves a little prime Matt Hughes. You ready for beatdown of the month?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, beatdown of the month. Usually I go to the UFC for my beatdowns, but not this month. I'm starting fresh. January 2013. I'm going Bellator. I'm going with the man we had on the show about an hour ago. I'm going with Ben Askren, giving Carl Amasu the beating of his life. Carl Amasu before the fight saying Ben Askren was boring. Ben Askren this, Ben Askren that. Ben Askren went out there and delivered a whole six-pack of whoop-ass out on the Bellator circle or hexagon or decagon, whatever the fuck they use in Bellator. I think it's a circle. But, Askren doing work over in Bellator. He and Michael Chandler really are those star champions in their promotion. And Ben Askren putting down work, making Carl Amasu look like a grape, like a busted-up tomato, blood all over the place, doctor stoppage after the third round. Ben Askren, who's your beatdown, P-Money?
Oh, man, that was a lovely fight, Jake. My beatdown for this month has got to be TJ Grant over Matt Wyman. There was a lot of great fights this past weekend in both Bellator and UFC. But Grant versus Wyman, I mean, that was such a close fight to call. I did have Grant win in that fight. I thought he was going to be able to outbox Matt Wyman, but I did not think his Muay Thai. I mean, I didn't know about his Muay Thai. I knew he had good hands, but those elbows, those knees, what he was able to put together in that cage against, like we mentioned earlier, an underrated Matt Wyman. TJ Grant, since coming down from 170, he's got the strength, he's got the wrestling, he's got a good size for 155. And I mean, god damn it, the power and the technique that we saw from him against Matt Wyman. I mean, that was just a massacre. I can't even come up with adjectives to describe the nature of that beatdown. It was just a fucking, oh my god, it was a fucking Scarface chainsaw in the shower scene.
Shit was a massacre.
It was just a fucking, it was a violation of it was a war crime.
It was a fucking war crime. Honorable mentions go to Anthony Pettis over Donald Cerrone and Ryan Bader over Vladimir Matyushenko. Both of those fights going down this past Saturday.
Oh, yeah. And you know what? Can I say real quick as well?
Yeah.
Pascal Kraus in his fight, God, I don't even remember the name of the fool that he beat, but god damn it, he beat the shit out of this kid. That's a very good honorable mention for beat down of the month as well. Solid uppercuts, just pounding this poor kid's face.
Uppercuts for days, son.
Yeah, Superman uppercuts, damn it.
Superman shit. We've got this Saturday's UFC 156 to break down at the end of the show, but really quick, there were actually 5 fight announcements that popped up this past week that kind of grabbed my attention, 4 of them being at UFC 159. We'll start with the one before that, though, at UFC on Fox 7, 420, San Jose, California, son.
Ooh-wee.
I believe that's going to be Benson Henderson versus Gilbert Melendez in San Jose, and your other Cesar Gracie guy at lightweight, Nate Diaz, will also be fighting there, taking on Josh Thompson, who obviously just took on the aforementioned Gilbert Melendez. What are your early thoughts on that fight? I imagine there are going to be some pretty good stare downs and trash talking going back and forth, but I think we'll ultimately see Mr. Nate Diaz back in the win column.
You know, that's certainly what I'm hoping for. I'm always rooting for the Diaz brothers, especially Nate. And this is really a great fight. Josh Thompson, he's had a lot of injury problems throughout his career. Who knows if that's going to be a factor coming into this fight. Nate, he's always managed to stay relatively healthy, always got insane cardio. His MMA game, I mean, the boxing, the jiu-jitsu, it's all there. And Josh Thompson, he's a really good, well-rounded mixed martial artist himself. He's had some wars with Gilbert Melendez. He's been in some great fights in MMA history. And let's not forget, he was also 2-1 in the UFC way back when.
Way back, son.
Way back in the day, son. So he's returning to the UFC with a winning record. But both of these guys coming off of losses, I think they're both going to be just fired up as shit. And oh man, this is going to be a sick fight.
Yeah, the reason I give Diaz the nod, he's obviously going to have the reach advantage. I like he's staying at lightweight, and I think that eye injury he incurred in the first round of Benson Henderson really did a lot. And I do think we'll see Nate in another title shot, and he gets through Josh Thompson with relative ease. So talk about these UFC 159 fights. It's going to be April 27th in Newark, New Jersey. The first of which is going to be the co-main event at that Jones-Sonnen card, and it's going to be Michael Bisping versus Alan Belcher. What are your early thoughts on this one? Stylistically, a pretty interesting fight. What do you think?
Yeah, it is a very interesting stylistic matchup. After both of their most recent fights, though, even though Bisping got knocked the fuck out and Belcher just kind of got beat for a decision, I'm kind of thinking Michael Bisping will take this one, which hurts me to say because I love the talent. I was really rooting for him against Okami. He just looked insane against Paul Harris. But he's struggled with that wrestling, and Michael Bisping, especially against Brian Stann, has shown some good wrestling. And I mean, really, as our good friend Ray had pointed out to me some time ago, Bisping really does get underrated on his wrestling all the time. I mean, even far back when he fought Rashad Evans.
The guy stood in there with Chael.
He did. He stood in there with Chael. Probably, I mean, some would say showed better takedown defense than Anderson Silva.
I think I would say that.
Not that, Anderson's a guy known for his takedown defense, but, just he's looking real good lately in all areas of the game. Alan Belcher, I don't know that he would have the power to put out Michael Bisping. The only two people who've knocked out Michael Bisping are Dan Henderson and Vitor fucking Belfort. Either of those guys could fucking knock down a fucking brick wall. So, hey, no shame in those two knockouts. Plus, it was a head kick from Vitor that knocked him out. And actually, now that I think about it, that was a fucking TKO. That wasn't even a knockout. But I digress. I'd have to take Bisping early in this one, although I may be rooting for Belcher.
I'm in the same exact boat. I was about to say the same thing. Bisping had some choice words for Alan Belcher after losing at UFC 155, saying, "Back to the prelims, boys," to he and Tim Boach. Well, it's going to be a co-main event. Alan Belcher, before losing to Okami, he was on a 4-fight win streak against Wilson Govea, Patrick Cote, Jason McDonald, and obviously that fight against Husmir Palhares. But like you, I also see an early Bisping victory. Another fight that's going to be going down there, Jim Miller versus Pat Healy. Healy coming over from Strikeforce. He actually was about to get a title fight against Gilbert Melendez, but after Melendez pulled out, he fought Kurt Hullabaugh at that Strikeforce finale, won that fight. He's won all of his last 6, even though none of them except maybe Mizuto Hirota are lightweights of any real mean. His last real tough lightweight was Josh Thompson, who he fought in June 2010 at Strikeforce and lost to. I have Jim Miller in this fight. Healy is getting the recognition he deserves for being probably the number 2 lightweight in Strikeforce right now, as he was about to get that title shot. But I think Miller's going to put him in his place. He looked incredible at UFC 155.
Oh, hell yeah. Miller, he came out and speaking of another guy, kind of like TJ Grant, Miller came out and just showcased a whole new level of the game. Miller, he's another guy, good wrestling, good hands, but he was working those elbows real nice. It looks like he's evolving in his striking game, which certainly never hurts, and to use it as effectively as he did against Lozon really impressed me. He's really looking good. I'm definitely thinking this is probably going to be a stoppage win for old Jim Miller. And I know I mentioned being a fan of the Diaz brothers, but the Miller brothers, you got to love the Miller brothers. They're the shit.
Miller brothers are the shit. I always root for Jim Miller just because he looks exactly like one of my best friends, Murphy. That Nate Diaz loss was really tough to watch. I felt like I was watching my friend bite his own tongue off.
Yeah, that was brutal. As a fan of both, I hated that fight. That was very tough.
A couple more fights for UFC 159. Roy Nelson versus Czech Congo. We've agreed on the first 3, picking Diaz, Bisping, and Miller. Looking at Roy Nelson versus Czech Congo. Czech Congo looking to come off that win against Sean Jordan. He's not lost in his last 6 fights except for the TKO to Mark Hunt in February 2012. Obviously, you have Roy Nelson, who is coming off that win versus Matt Mitrione at the TUF 14 finale. I have Roy Nelson in this one. Czech, if you're gonna lose to Mark Hunt, Roy Nelson is like Mark Hunt on steroids. But yeah, I don't see Congo being able to win this fight. I got a Roy Nelson knockout.
Oh yeah, that's I'm with you there, man. We're agreeing 4 times in a row, and you definitely got to pick Nelson by knockout. That's the only way he wins in the UFC. You look at that record; every single one of those wins by knockout. It's a beautiful thing. That's why all the guys love Big Country. Especially the fat guys. He puts on a show and he represents for the fatties out there. So big ups to Roy Nelson. But, I mean, he's got legit chops. He's got legit grappling chops. He's got a legit game. And that fucking chin talk about legit. My God, to take the kind of shots. I mean, he went 3 rounds on the bad end of a Junior Dos Santos beat down. I don't even know if he got knocked down in that fight. And in his fight against Fabricio Verdum, he took some of the most disgusting knees. I mean, you watch the Phantom Cam on that shit, and it just looks like his fucking skull is just getting caved in. And he takes it. He takes it, and he's always got that vicious power. Congo, he's done. I love seeing Congo get knocked out. And I sincerely hope that's what we're in for, and that's what I'm predicting as well when this fight goes down.
Yeah, Nelson's one of these guys. I feel like you're going to see one of two things when he steps out there. Either he'll win via first round KO, or he'll lose the fight via decision and take a ton of damage in doing so. And I think this is going to be of the first round knockout variety, and I think we're 4 for 4. Let's see if we can make it an even 5 for 5. The last fight that I wanted to break down, it's Phil Davis taking on Team Darkside coach Vinny Magalhaes. UFC 159. I'm not sure all of these, probably deserve to be on the main card. I don't know if they all will be on the main card. But Davis versus Magalhaes, it's a light heavyweight matchup between Davis, who's coming off a win against Wagner Prado. Before that, he was undefeated before losing to Rashad Evans. And then you have Vinny Magalhaes, who's looking good in his MMA career, just brought over to the UFC for the second time, won his first fight against Igor Pekrajic. I love Vinny Magalhaes. I love seeing him go back and forth with Renato Laranja. I love that he's on Team Sonnen in The Ultimate Fighter, and I'll probably be rooting for him against Phil Davis. But Phil Davis has lost one fight in his MMA career, and it's to who I believe is the perennial number 2 light heavyweight in the UFC, Rashad Evans. I think Phil is if Phil wasn't so skilled with his jiu-jitsu, I would say that Magalhaes would have more of a shot. But Phil Davis, a blue belt in BJJ under Lloyd Irvin, a Division I wrestler from Penn State, obviously. I just don't see Vinny being able to get it done in this fight, and I have Phil Davis by a decision in this one.
Yeah, son. I think that's probably how it's going to go, and I'd love to see Phil Davis get a finish though. Maybe a ground and pound TKO with Vinny's chops. I don't know if that's really going to happen. I don't know if Phil will be able to really open up on any kind of ground strikes like that. But he's got the freakish athlete frame at 205 pounds. And yeah, I just don't like Vinny Magalhaes. So the way all the shit he puts out on Twitter, I just can't wait to see him lose just to get that mouth shut.
Any Team Darkside fans listening and calling now, fucking we got P money dropping shit about Vinny Magalhaes.
Spitting that venom, son. Because I'll tell you, I mean, oh man, I can't even believe it. He just says some of the dumbest shit on Twitter. It's like he fucking took press lessons from Tito Ortiz. It's just, it's just so frustrating with that guy. I hate it when people on my timeline retweet his shit. It's just, oh man, yeah. I like Phil Davis in this though. He's you can't deny Magalhaes' chops. All the shit I'm talking. I have to give Magalhaes props. His grappling skills are unparalleled. But Phil Davis, he's a different kind of athlete, coming from a different form of grappling, and I think he's going to be able to put it on Magalhaes in this fight.
Oh shit! I was just talking a shitload, and I was muted, son of a bitch. Yeah, really quick before we get to UFC 156, we got 10 solid seconds of sports. Where Chris isn't here. I don't know if you'd want to chat sports with me, but at least for our listeners' sake, at least for our MMA listeners' sake, we'll keep non-MMA sports chat to 10 seconds. So here we go. Let me catch my breath here. Ravens and 49ers prepare for Sunday's Super Bowl, which features two brothers squaring off as head coaches on either squad. The NHL season gets his legs under it as the Lightning, Blackhawks, and Sharks all red hot. Lakers still suck. Michigan takes number 1 spot in college hoops for the first time since Pat Piper in 1992. All right, had the timer going every there. I timed it out. That was exciting. Also, one more time, if you want to call in, the number is 213-457-3380. Let your opinion know. Just tweet at us. It's cheaper at the MMA Podcast. Real quick, Bellator. We won't spend too much time on it, but obviously last week we had Bellator 86. The welterweight quarterfinal winners, Douglas Lima, Ben Saunders, Brent Weidman, and I believe it was Raul Amaya. King Mo winning via TKO first round, and obviously Ben Askren taking that title victory against Carl Amasu via doctor stoppage at the end of round 3. Tomorrow's card, Bellator 87. Actually put Patricky Pitbull Fieri pulled out due to an undisclosed injury, so it looks like that lightweight tourney match between David Rickles and Lloyd Woodard is going to take that main card spot. We got those 4 lightweight tourney fights to look forward to, so I'll definitely be watching that. UFC 156, we saved the best for last, and we got a hell of a main card. Really quickly, the prelims, the Facebook prelims, 2 bantamweight cards, Chico Camus versus Dustin Kimura, and Edwin Figueroa versus Francisco Rivera. The FX card features a slew of lightweight fights. You got Gleison Tebow versus Evan Dunham, Jacob Volkman versus Bobby Green, friend of the show, Eve Edwards versus Isaac Valley Flag, also a welterweight matchup between Strikeforce guy Tyron Woodley versus Jay Heron, who's coming off a loss to Jake Ellenberger after coming over from Bellator. Another guy who lost to Ben Askren, who we just had on the show. Let's get to the main card, though. We'll start off from the bottom to the top. We'll start with the flyweights and what's likely a title eliminator match. Both of them had their chance at Mighty Mouse. Both of them lost, and that loss is the most recent fight on either guy's career. Joseph Benavidez versus Ian McCall. A lot of people thought the flyweight division was Benavidez's to win, so he's obviously going to be the favorite in this fight. Unfortunately, Ian McCall's going through some family issues back at home. Obviously, we hope the best for him. He's been on the show and was a real chipper guy, really cool guy, so we obviously hope the best for Ian. But, what do you think about this fight between the flyweights?
This is going to be a good fight. The thing about the flyweights for me is it's so hard to pick who's going to win because they move so fast. For me, and for my eyes, it's harder sometimes to pick up the nuances and the subtleties in the differences in the game just because they are smaller and they do fight it. It's such a crazy pace. But that having been said, I love this fight. Both these guys, they've got great striking. They've got great wrestling. And like pretty much every flyweight fight we've seen in the UFC, it's pretty much just you can figure this one to be a barn burner. It's going to be a good one. As far as who I'm picking in this fight, I'm not quite sure. I may have to save my prediction for the MMA Podcast / MMA Mental Roundtable tomorrow night.
Ooh, gonna make us wait on it. The smart gambler would probably go with Joseph Benavidez, who's a minus 250 favorite out in Vegas. Ooh. But Ian McCall is one of these guys who can come out with fire. If he comes out with the right attitude, especially being very upset with the family situation, we could see Ian McCall with a fire lit under his ass. So simply because Ian McCall came on the show and Joseph Benavidez turned us down, I got Ian Uncle Creepy McCall. Welterweight bout, John Fitch between Damian Maia. We were talking about odds out in Vegas. Fitch is the guy who's favored, minus 190. Maia, he's plus 165. Both of them have looked real impressive. Obviously, John Fitch, after coming back from that knockout loss to Johnny Hendricks, he looked extremely good versus Eric Silva at UFC 153 in October. And you have Damian Maia, who stepped down to welterweight and defeated Dong Young Kim in kind of a freak rib injury fight, or I don't know what happened. It was his back maybe. And then Rick Story, another first round win. That was more Maia being the controller, getting that neck crank halfway through that UFC 153 card that John Fitch was also on. I have Fitch. Maia's shown a real opening to be dominated by wrestlers. Case in point, that Weidman Maia fight we were talking about earlier. Lost. Really, he has beat a lot of really decent wrestlers via submission. Obviously, he got that Sonnen tap. The Marquardt fight wasn't, much other than Marquardt just knocking him out early on. But, Fitch is a good enough wrestler. I think he gets the top position and controls Maia, rides him out to a 30-27 win.
I think, and you bring up the line in Vegas, there's been a lot of movement on that line, because I swear I checked that as recently as last night, and it was looking like something like Fitch minus 170, Maia plus 150, so to move the way that it did, it seems like the smart money's going on Fitch, and it's hard to argue against it, but I'm going to have to in this fight. Damian Maia, he's looked like a beast coming back down to 170. His win over Dong Young Kim was via TKO, but that's because he broke his rib while taking him down. And he took down Dong Young Kim, who's more known for his wrestling. I mean, that's really his only skill is wrestling. And he took him down. And in his fight against Rick Story, who... let's face it, Rick Story is a guy, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was invented for guys like him. It's impossible to knock him out. You just have to choke him unconscious and try and put him to sleep, because you can't do it with your fists. And my God, I can still see that neck crank and the blood starting to pour out of Rick Story's nose. My God, that was just such a fucking savage submission. I mean, Damian Maia, he's looking like a Shinya Aoki level of evil with his submissions. I've got to go with Maia in this fight. It may be me being stupid, but you know what? I think Maia's stand-up is at least as good, if not better, than John Fitch's, which really isn't saying much, but it's basically a wash on the feet and on the ground. I think Maia's going to wrap up Fitch. I really honestly do. Yeah, he looked good against Eric Silva, but Eric Silva couldn't stop a Charlie Brenneman takedown. And, so that just kind of lets you know where his ground game is at. And Damian Maia, he's one of the best. And he's come down from middleweight to 170, like you mentioned. So this isn't going to be like Chris Weidman on top of him. Granted, Fitch is a strong wrestler with good top game. But I think the strength will be more evenly matched in this fight, and I like Damian Maia to get the win.
Yeah, kind of to go toward your point, his last 7 fights at middleweight were all decisions against Dan Miller, Anderson Silva, Miranda, Grove, Munoz, Santiago, and Weidman. All those fights went to a decision, and he went 4-3 in those fights. Since moving to welterweight, both fights have ended in the first half of the first round. Obviously, things are changing, and if this fight's going to end in the first round, I say it's by a Maia submission. So if he's able to keep that up, if it ends in the first round, I say Maia wins via submission, but I still am sticking with my Fitch unanimous decision pick. Moving on, the next 2 fights are the most mismatched in Vegas. The first one, Alistair Overeem and Antonio Silva. Overeem, I believe, minus 400 in the books. Far and wide believed to be the one who's going to win this fight. A lot of people want to see Overeem versus Velasquez. And if he puts forth an impressive performance, he might get that title shot. I'm assuming you have Overeem in this one too, so how do you see Overeem winning this fight?
Yeah, you are certainly assuming correctly, sir. I'm thinking this is just going to be a straightforward knockout. Punches. Bigfoot Silva, he's got good jiu-jitsu. However, so does Alistair Overeem. Of course, Bigfoot, he's got that freakish build about him. But honestly, if Brock Lesnar couldn't work any kind of takedown against Overeem, I don't think Bigfoot will be able to. I think this is just Bigfoot's just going to come in, or I'm sorry, Bigfoot, Overeem. Overeem's going to come in and he's just going to just unload some serious punches and just knock him out. I don't think we're going to see too many Uber knees. Because I don't think he wants that gigantism having ass of Antonio Silva on his ass. So I think he's just going to avoid those gangly limbs, avoid those takedowns, avoid whatever sloppy strikes he tries to throw, and he's just going to fucking put some serious hands on that big chin.
Powerful P-Money. I actually was thinking I'm seeing Overeem tying it up in the clinch, delivering some of those Uber knees to the body. You know, you mentioned that Brock Lesnar fight, just like that one.
Yeah.
Overeem taking, Overeem taking that fight, son. The other one, which is the most one-sided in Vegas, you have Rashad Evans, who I believe I just X'd out of it, but I believe it's something like -600, -500. I'm pulling it back up now. -500, Rashad Evans in Vegas.
Sweet Lord.
He's yeah. I mean, Little Nog. I don't know how Little Nog talked his way into a fight with the perennial number 2 at the division after losing back-to-back fights against Bader and Davis and then beating Tito Ortiz. But he did. You know, he gets a lot of credit because his last name is Nogueira. And yeah, you know, if he beat Rashad Evans, it would be the upset of the year. But I don't think that's going to happen. You with us, P-Money?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Terribly sorry. Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen either. Of course, you know, Rogerio, you can't count him out. He's got a really good skill set, but Rashad Evans, he is just tailor-made to beat him. You look at the list of guys that Lil Nog has lost to, and it's just Rashad Evans is all those guys and then some. I mean, I can't really recall off the top of my head, but the Jason Brills fight, Brills won that fight. Rogerio got the nod when he shouldn't have. But, you know, his losses to Ryan Bader, losses to Phil Davis. I mean, hell, we saw the way Rashad handled Phil Davis. This is just, it's going to be a good one. Of course, you know, Rogerio, he's got some serious hands, and he is a threat to knock Rashad out. I can't believe the line is so huge just given that fact. But, yeah, I do think this will be a Rashad Evans unanimous decision.
Yeah, I agree there. Rashad Evans, you know, I don't know if he's going to be able to finish Little Nog, because Little Nog has proven to be somebody who's pretty tough to finish. Both of those losses against Bader and Davis were 3-round decisions. Really quick before we get to the main event, the championship fight. You know, we're talking about mismatches. There are 3 title fights this month. You have Aldo Edgar, Henan Barao versus Michael McDonald for that interim bantamweight belt, and Ronda Rousey versus Liz Carmouche for that women's bantamweight belt. Do you know what the line is right now for Ronda Rousey?
Ooh, the line for Ronda Rousey versus Carmouche, I do not know what it is. I mean, I could take a guess, but...
Take a stab at it.
Oh... You know, I'm thinking that's got to be huge. I'm thinking that's probably like a -1,200.
Very close. You should work in Vegas. -1,100.
Oh, man. Well, hey,
yeah.
I'm hoping to get there, son. Hoping to get there.
Frank Edgar, Jose Aldo, much closer odds. Jose -220, Frankie +180. I've been wanting to talk about this fight for a while. This is, I mean, really when you think about it, people are clamoring for all these super fights. Oh, I want to see Anderson fight Jones versus Cormier, Anderson versus GSP. I don't think people really realize this is a super fight right under your nose, folks. Jose Aldo and Frankie Edgar are 2 of the top pound-for-pound fighters in the world, and we're seeing them fight each other. God, this is going to be a great one. And it's leaving me a little perplexed. I don't know who I'm going to choose. You know, I never want to bet against Jose Aldo because he is really up in a league of his own with, like I mentioned before, Benson Henderson, Anderson Silva, and George St. Pierre as far as being dominant. And probably Dominic Cruz as well. But he's taken on Frankie Edgar, who just time in and time out. He is really the one guy who you want to underrate, but you can't, because he's just so damn good. Defeating Penn twice, Maynard twice. That second fight against Benson Henderson could have been judged either way. And if Edgar hadn't been coming off 3 straight rematches, I think there would have been a argument to give him a third shot against Benson Henderson. Just how close that fight was. I actually gave that second Bendo-Frankie fight to Frankie. This is going to be a hell of a fight, and I just don't know who to pick. They both have their stylistic advantages. Jose Aldo, obviously the better striker, at least the more well-rounded striker, even though Frankie Edgar does have devastating boxing, kind of throws those punches in bunches like a Manny Pacquiao. Beautiful footwork, maybe the best footwork in the featherweight division. But Jose Aldo, beautiful kickboxer. They both have their own advantages on the ground. Jose Aldo probably the better technician, Brazilian jiu-jitsu wise, while Frankie Edgar is the better wrestler. Man, they just juxtapose against each other so crazily. You have Aldo, who is this, this assassin, and Frank Edgar, who is the UFC's Rocky, always storming back from fights. I just don't know, man.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, you broke it down real nice right there. That's basically, I think, what has just been racking all the fight fans' brains for the past probably couple weeks. This fight is just going to be huge. And like you said, they both really have pros and cons to their game. They both just have different skill sets where you say, okay, well, this could be Jose Aldo advantage over Frankie Edgar, and vice versa. Frankie Edgar's hands, I think his hands might be better than Jose Aldo's. However, Jose Aldo, in his striking, he's got more knees, just more of a well-rounded Muay Thai game as well. But yeah, it's just, Jose Aldo's Muay Thai versus Frankie Edgar's boxing. Both are excellent. The speed, who knows? Everybody says, well, Frankie Edgar's going to have the speed advantage. We don't know that. He's coming down.
Yeah, exactly. He definitely had the speed advantage against everyone at 155, but not necessarily against one of the fastest featherweights in the world.
Yeah, exactly. We just don't know. Could Frankie Edgar be even faster at 145 than he is at 155? Maybe. From what I understand, he walks around fairly close to 155. So, heck, him at 145 could just be the best shape we've ever seen. There's just so many X factors in this fight. One of the things I keep going back to is Jose Aldo's first UFC fight against Mark Hominick, though. And granted, that was like I literally just said, that was Jose Aldo's first fight in the UFC. Who knows if that was a factor? It was the biggest North American attendance for any UFC event ever. It was the first event to ever show every single fight. It was a huge card, literally huge card, stacked from top to bottom. So who knows if being the headline on that had a lot to do with it. Of course, his opponent, Mark Hominick, was fighting in his home country of Canada. But, we saw Jose Aldo not having all of his gas in the 5th round. He was getting taken down by Hominick, who is anything but a celebrated wrestler. So there's just so much. There's so much going into this fight.
Yeah, I think both of us would agree that the longer this fight drags on, the more it goes into Frankie Edgar's court. I don't have his record in front of me right now. I'm pulling it up. But yeah, Frankie Edgar, of his last 6 fights, 5 have gone 25 minutes. 5 have been 5 rounds, 5-minute rounds. Penn, Maynard, Henderson. Just, man, we know Frankie Edgar can go the distance, and Jose Aldo has proven in the later rounds he sort of cools down a little bit. You mentioned that fight against Hominick. Really, though, thinking about it, just a the one thing you pointed out, the speed advantage he seems to always have. I don't know if it's going to be there this time, and he has shown a weakness of getting rocked. And whether it was a big overhand right from Maynard or those leg kicks from Benson Henderson, he's shown that he's vulnerable. And it just so happens that, crisp strikes to the head and leg kicks are Jose Aldo's bread and butter. Just, that speed advantage isn't going to be like it is, and that first round is going to be very interesting. I'm going to be watching really closely to see how he paces with Jose Aldo. Frankie's usually the guy who's scurrying in and out and stuff. It'll be interesting to see if he still fights at that pace, if Aldo tries to keep up with it, if Aldo goes with a more relaxed style, and we see Edgar as the more active guy. We're going to learn a lot about the fight in the first round.
Yeah, absolutely. And heck, it's super hard to make any kind of prediction of this fight before that. Even watching the weigh-ins, which will be coming on Friday, that'll only tell us so much. It's just, this is such a crazy fight. I don't know. God, you got to have some serious balls to put some money down on this fight. Because it is a doozy. The one thing that's guaranteed is it's going to be a fucking badass fight.
Yep. Both of these guys are comfortable standing in the pocket and exchanging blows, and I think we're going to see a lot of that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there will be plenty of that. And like you said, Frankie Edgar, he has been rocked. Heck, actually, now that I think about it, I don't know that he got rocked by BJ Penn in his 2 fights with Penn.
I really feel like for either guy, they're facing the best opponent they have in their entire career. I think Edgar is the best fighter Jose Aldo's ever fought, and Aldo's the best fighter that Edgar's ever fought. So it's both of them are going to be raised up to a different level.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's definitely a great case for that. Frankie Edgar, heck, I know some people who thought Frankie Edgar won the first fight. You can make the case for that in his first fight with Benson Henderson, and you can absolutely make the case for that in his second fight. So depending on who you talk to, Frankie Edgar, in some people's minds, should still be the UFC 155-pound champion. And Jose Aldo, he's just a guy, he has a loss on his record, but I'm like, I don't know who the hell beat him, and we've never seen that fight, and just watching him fight, it's, you wonder who is a match for him at this weight class. And really, I think Frankie Edgar is his last best test at the moment. If Frankie Edgar can't get it done, I'm looking out at the 145 division, and I really don't know who I could see that could wrest the title from his grasp.
Yeah, and it might be this year, it might be next year, but as Jose Aldo gets older, the move to lightweight will become more and more appealing to him. But I didn't know who I was going to pick, honestly, until now. But just thinking about it, even though Frankie Edgar has a granite chin, he's shown he's susceptible to be rocked by strikes. I think just with those rockings that Jose Aldo is able to at least take the first few rounds on the scorecard. Maybe Edgar rallies back and wins the 4th and or the 5th round, but it's just not enough to steal enough rounds, and we see Jose Aldo win a 5-round decision.
Damn, and it's kind of funny because the more we're talking about it, I think I'm going to lean towards another underdog pick and take Frankie Edgar. Yeah, son, I'm going to roll with Edgar on this one. Heck, I may switch tomorrow night. I may switch back the night after that, but gosh, I think he really could do it. He's just got such tight hands. The speed's pretty even, and I think his overall boxing, I see Jose Aldo, at least with his hands, he has good combinations. I just like Frankie's a little better. Mixing the takedowns and, plus I don't know if Jose Aldo has the power to stop him unless it's with a knee or a head kick or something like that. I don't think he's got the power in his punches to really rock Edgar. So Shit, at the moment, I'll say Frankie Edgar, UD.
Frankie Edgar, UD is your pick. Before I put a bow on this bitch, you have anything else you want to talk about or break down?
No, you know what? Heck, this is just it's going to be a perfect card this weekend coming up. Big Super Bowl game this Sunday, but fuck the NFL. This is all about MMA. MMA, in my mind and in my heart, is the number one sport in the world. And, even though the NFL is entertaining, for me, the big event is Saturday, February 2nd. That's the UFC card, Frankie Edgar versus Jose Aldo. It's going to be fucking sick. And, can't wait to discuss it a little further in depth on the roundtable tomorrow.
Yeah, as a lifelong NFL fan, if you would have told me a few years ago I would have been more excited about a cage fight than the Super Bowl, I would have thought you were shitting me. But I too, I'm more excited for Aldo Edgar than I am 49ers Ravens. Big thanks as always to the listeners. You guys keep it going. Ben Askren coming on. That was a fun interview. Visit us on Twitter and our website. Visit our boy P Money on Twitter, Sweet Pappy Jones. Thank you so much for coming in. P Money and the rest of the crew, including Ray Ramses, Jay, and Dave, will be on the roundtable tomorrow night, 7 to 9 Eastern, 4 to 6 Pacific. Follow us on Twitter for those links. You want to plug MMA Mental one more time before I send it out?
Yeah, buddy, good looking out. And thanks for letting me fill in. And Chris, thanks for letting me fill in as well. Check out MMAmental.com. We got that good news always coming in, hot off the presses, the same time as all the other websites. We're getting it up there. We got the podcast, of course, another fine program along the vein of the MMA podcast. Check it out. Check out Ramsey's at Word on the Streets. And, MMA Mental, check us out. We're going to have a new show up on Friday with some more solid guests lined up for show.
Yeah, I just got a message from Chris via Morse code from Antarctica. He said he killed an extra Nazi polar bear for you and is currently wearing its coat. The MMA Podcast has been every Wednesday, changing it to Friday. Going to do a couple weeks with Ramses from the Word on the Street podcast. Have Darren Crookshank on next week. Hopefully, Joey Diaz and Henzo Gracie on in the weeks after that, too. Really looking forward to that. Patrick, again, thank you for coming on. It was a fucking honor to chat it up with you. Check us both on the roundtable tomorrow night. And I guess until then, we go.
With Irish science, silencing all these idiots caught up in all their ignorance. Two clans fighting under the same banner. We all got love for this ground game, and that's all that matters. In the balance, the teachings of the grandmaster. I'm trying to master the system, that's what I'm after. And stay true to the craft, spark trees to relax. Old school miracle.